So odd to think their universe lies directly over our own. A higher, more frenzied plane. Like the layers of a cut of fabric, the cosmos is made of multiple universes overlapping, feeding into one another, as a stream does a river. Do the layers ever end? Is there a final destination? If Ilsa doesn't know, what hope do I have in figuring it out? Excerpts from the Journal of Dr. Francisco Amul, Murcia, February 1894. The Senator. Mara breezed through the dusty bronze turnstile, lifting her staff and moving her hips through the rotating arm. It clicked 3 times as she passed, confirming her as a non-purged, unearthed creature, granting her entry to the city.
Home sweet home.
Slinging her staff over her shoulder, she continued toward a brick wall ahead. A mural stretched out before her. Across its face was depicted a giant, statuesque human head, white, with blank eyes akin to a Greek statue's. Many shades of color, in cookie-cutter shadows, were stacked behind the head. Purple first, red last. At the end of the mural was a diagram labeled Unearth, depicting 6 spheres with overlapping orbits in between the Earth and the Moon. Near the end of the entryway, golden letters strung above read, "Welcome to Trivium City," in a series of languages. A banner tucked away at the bottom read, "Current Majority Leader, Highwin."
As if it's ever said anything different.
Existing in the exact same space as the hot liquid core of the Earth, but on a different materialistic frequency. Trivium, the planet she was currently standing on, was the glue that held the fabric of unearthed society together. All creatures of unearth had access to it. It acted as a moon, as well as an anchor to the other worlds. When the peoples of the Eve first settled the mountainous planet, they used the only available flat stretch of land to build. There the tribunal was constructed, housing the Senate, its legal arm, the counselors, and the royal security, the Barium Guard.
Usually houses them, at least. We'll see when we get there.
Trivium City, or TC as it was lovingly called by many, grew around the tribunal into a metropolis, becoming the central hub of unearthed culture. By now, the city had hundreds of generations worth of history sewn into its bones, and its population had never stopped growing or slowed. The financial sector, a recent addition, seemed to be always thriving.
Then there's my favorite part.
No visit to TC was complete without a trip to the immaculately designed Museum of Nature, Science, and Eve, courtesy of Alice the Builder, a long-dead hero to the people of Highwin. There was also a sprawling district devoted to the colossal competitive Eve leagues of Unearth.
Really big enterprise. Not my thing. Pretty barbaric, you ask me.
Getting to Trivium was as simple as a shift, which only meant sparing some Malos and focusing. But seeing as Mara had not visited the capital in nearly 85 years, her path back was slightly more complicated than that. With some steam to blow off after the gathering in the South Pacific, she only wanted to get back to hunting Raythians, hoping that making them extinct again might take off some of the edge. Though Mara was tinted with fervor, and not a violent creature by nature, she'd been experiencing flashes of wrath the last couple of decades, particularly since the Joseph Mandate began. To her, it was an insult to all Medolians, who for the last 40,000 years had guarded and kept the earth safe from those who would unbalance it.
Alexander the Great was a tough nut to crack, gotta admit. Spread too much rapture, if you can believe it.
By the stroke of some asshole's pen, the responsibilities she'd taken exceedingly seriously her entire life,
And career, same thing.
had been handed off to a pair of small-minded mortals from modern North America,
Ugh.
who were still having trouble understanding their own demises, let alone be able to lend a hand. Releasing them in the Arizona desert that fateful day after saving them from the Raytheon horde, she'd hoped it would be the last she'd see of the humans. Sadly, that was not the case.
It's what I get for doing something nice.
After leaving the gathering, Mara set out across Africa and Southeast Asia to find the Wrath cult, coming up empty-handed. No raiding parties. No smoldering villages. Her abundant prey of the last year had dried up, as had the distraction from her standing orders. Since Isaiah had taken the humans to question the scythe Nigel Rowe,
not a bad move.
Their fates were out of her hands.
But I'm not going to keep running around in circles in the desert. We need more information about Joseph to figure out what he's after. It's time to start looking in places no one's thought to.
Breaking her edict, Mara masked her energy and set off for Trivium City, where she might finally find the answers she was seeking.
The Warden's sentry can get as mad as he wants.
She arrived at the Trivium South Eve Gate via massive golden rings, half buried, which stuck 50 feet into the air. Known as the Ebb Rings, they were smooth, without markings, and also the only way on or off the planet.
Partly a security thing, but mostly because we can't shift directly into Trivium. Only the rings. The mineral that makes up the majority of the planet amplifies and channels Eve, creating way too much interference.
The construction and installation of the two Eve gates, one in the north of the city, one in the south, each with 3 rings, marked the official end of the original Eve War. Unos. Presently, after passing through the rings, walking through the Eve Gate Plaza, past the bronze turnstile and the white-faced mural, and finally stepping out of the low corridor that gave way to an urban skyline, Mara knew quickly something was not right in the city.
Guess it's true. Most people skipped town.
The wave of palpable Eve she was expecting, usually a rejuvenating blast to her senses, was almost non-existent. The few hundred scattered signatures remaining in the city were muddy and unfocused. Entering Bellion Square, wishing to see her favorite places and her favorite people, to smell food she actually liked, and to hear some decent music for a change, she found none of it. Instead, she was greeted by closed shops and folded-up boutique carts. The few eateries and pawn shops still open shared a smattering of customers between them. With so little product on their shelves, Mara wondered if there had been rampant looting. The brick walkways lay open, dismally gray, and worst of all, there was no music. She longed for a reprieve from humanity's painfully thin, meandering excuse for symphony, far preferring multiple compositions layered over one another, stampeding along as fast as she could run, bounding and crashing in a beautiful anarchic musical experience. Though she did have a certain fondness for Frederick Handel's work.
Messiah kicks ass.
Carrying a maroon haze, buried by shadow, the moon of Trivium, Doloros, hovered overhead as though near to crushing the pointed gray mountains looming outside of town. A golden glowing center on the murky horizon gave the area a dark, muted feel, as though cemented in perpetual dusk. The city's wide streets, designed for foot traffic and pedal carts, were lined with flush, flat-faced businesses, leapfrogging the same 5 or 6 dark pastel colors. Most were cut across the middle by horizontal service windows. Some had chairs out front, turning them into bistros. A few boutiques were big enough to let customers inside shop or dine, but the vast majority of trade in Trivium was done at windows. What made today so strange wasn't the barren streets. Trivium City had looked this way before, during either an Eve storm or a shutdown of tribunal operations. But as she walked past the shops and cafeterias, Mara noticed none of the pure Eve creatures were to be seen or felt. There were no celestials stomping around and knocking everything over with their rigid, folded wings. No archfiend slithering by, leaving vapor trails. No Macan scythes.
Scything, I guess? They kind of float.
Mara was never exactly sure how the cocoon-like creatures from Phobos moved. All the same, returning to Trivium and not seeing a single pure was both disheartening and suspicious. All signs were pointing to a worst-case scenario unfolding, and Mara felt utterly helpless to stop it. Highwind and Eros really were close to war, and apparently the lesser kingdoms had fallen in line, which would only bolster the chances of conflict. The growing xenophobia in the city was noticeable the last time Mara visited, but somehow things had gotten even worse, faster than she'd ever anticipated. Word of the humans becoming delegates in the Joseph Mandate must have been the final straw that started the panic. Most citizens of Unearth still held on to the belief humans were far below them in terms of importance, even though the energy of life on Earth allowed them to exist in the first place. Often it reminded Mara of the way humans disrespected poultry, fish, and their domesticated animals, despite a heavy reliance on the creatures. She focused on the remaining energy signatures in the city, looking for anyone familiar.
Can't tell who's left to speak with. Wait, there's Stoddy. Thank the Eve. Of course she stayed. She'll be in the mood to talk. Always is. Just hope she kept the stove on.
Turning down a few avenues lined with businesses, many barred up, or with steel shades drawn, Mara finally came upon Miss Massachusetts Meadery, a corner operation with a rusted sign hanging overhead. Little more than a pastel blue box mixed in with all the others, but with a little extra space because it was located on a corner lot, the meadery had a long, horizontal service window about 6 feet high. Stools of different sizes were lined up out front. 3, on the far end, were more than quadruple the size of a normal stool.
For the Lostros, her kind. A chef could run a successful business with just 2 pure Lostros regulars.
Inside, Mara saw a silhouette like a 7-foot potato, finding Stoddy Klein, Massachusetts, facing away with a clipboard in hand, checking items off a list. Her yellow dress with white trim and lilac print hung loosely on her distended frame, which took up most of the interior of the business. Surrounded by food prep tables, mini fridges, utensils, knives, and a seemingly endless supply of mixing bowls and serving plates, Stoddy could serve a fleet of hungry Unearth humans without ever standing from her seat. Sliding onto a stool, Mara took off her staff and laid it on the counter with a clang. Stoddy's spine stiffened. I know that sound. Only one weapon in the universe makes that sound. Hope there's a hungry Medolian sitting behind me. Otherwise, I got a thief who's about to learn a thing or two from Miss Stoddy Klein Mass. Mara smiled. Heard this was the only place in town still serving goulash. Stoddy spun around, revealing a face that frequently looked to be in some kind of discomfort.
Don't tell me. It's your knee this time. Maybe the back.
But would always make room to smile for a friend. Leaning forward, she slid the service window open with her enormous paw. You can rest assured my meadery closes the day they haul my dead, fat Lostros ass out of here. Mara felt better already. Hi, Stoddy. My favorite Medolian! So good to see you! Stoddy's flash of happiness quickly devolved into melancholy. Sorry, hon. I would get up to properly greet you, but the foot's been acting up again, so...
Foot, of course. Stupid me.
Not a problem. Which one is it again? Stoddy leaned down, squishing to get her face closer to the service window. I honestly can't remember. Just so happy to see you. So. Sit. My gosh. Are you hungry? You want goulash, right? I bet you could eat a whole Riber snout. Just because you look like a human doesn't mean you have to eat like one, you know. Stoddy still talked to Mara like the mother she never had, or wanted, despite being less than half as old as the Medolian. Her unique way of communicating came from habits she'd picked up living on Earth for 300 years, in an effort to study human chefs and restaurants before coming back to Trivium to fulfill her dream and open the meadery.
She even coined a slogan, human food, done right.
But Mara wasn't here for human food. She wanted unearthed grub. Have you gotten bigger since I saw you last? Mara asked hesitantly. Oh, you noticed! Thank you! Yes, I have been shaping up. Or shaping out is more like it, right? Stoddy chuckled, quickly checking off her list before tossing the clipboard aside. Mara guessed her friend weighed over 1,000 pounds by now, looking more like an egg with a face than a human.
On her world, bigger is better. Still love her the same. Just worries me.
It wasn't Stoddy's fault she was born on Doloros. However, growing closer to her original form, that of a Lostros, could only mean she was using more grief, the shade of Eve that created Stoddy in the first place. Unearthed humans could get concentrated forms of it in some of the seedier corners of Trivium City, usually in pill form, but the methods of absorbing it surreptitiously were getting foxier all the time.
The question is, why is she using it?
Stoddy swiveled backward and cleared off the grill being used as a desk. So? What was your favorite again? You like your Riber salted and sanded, yeah? Maybe a nice moss to wash it down, eh? No moss. Thank you. Right, I forgot you stopped drinking after your breakup with your girlfriend. Oops, sorry. Ex-girlfriend. The flame. The one. Stoddy. Back in the good old days, right? You looked happier back then. Something the world could use more of. Not that I really care. We're all going to die. Makes me jealous of the humans. They get to do it quicker than the rest of us. Stoddy lit her stove. You want 2 chunks or 3, love? 3, please. And she was never my girlfriend, Mara corrected. She was my roommate. Right, sorry. No talking about the famous you-know-who. And we were never in love. What was that, dear? One more time? Never mind. Mara grumbled and turned away, while Stoddy kept cooking. Speaking about the good old days, Mara started, unsure if this would go over well. You trying to go back? What you mean? Stoddy asked, staring at the grill. Mara decided not to tiptoe. You going to need a changing chamber soon, or? Stoddy put her knife down, shut her eyes, and folded her hands. Are you saying my appearance is unpleasant? Because... No, of course not. Never. You're gorgeous. I've just lost too many friends to obsessing over ascension rites and CAF ideologies, is all. If you think I would ever subject myself to begging my way back into Doloros with those sycophants... No, of course not. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I just hope you're not chasing a dragon here. That's what the humans call it. Means putting stuff in your body you don't need. Looking for something you shouldn't want. Using grief won't help you. Mara hoped her friend didn't think she was talking down to her. That's rich coming from a Medolian. Not all of us can be born of pure, pristine Malos, Stoddy sassed. Want to know what I think? I think you've been spending too much time around life forms who don't live long enough to know anything, and you should watch your mouth if you want this meal to be edible. Stoddy picked up her knife and resumed chopping, silently forgiving Mara. Swiveling from station to station in a circular arc, spinning knives, chopping vegetables, turning a roast, yanking roots, and stir-frying whatever it was that made her goulash the best, she habitually gabbed with Mara as the meal came together in a large bowl. Many subjects were quickly touched upon, including an outbreak of mockweed on Nashwin.
Pretty scary. Eats other plants, which is exactly what their cities are made of.
Stoddy also talked about a recent scare when she was forced to use 6 frying pans to fight off an attempted robbery by a couple of Veen scythes.
Gross little bastards.
And I'm not the only one, Stoddy said, flipping her skillet to punctuate her point. Been mass looting going on everywhere. Worst I've seen.
So where is the barium guard? This is strange.
When their small talk was finalized, Stoddy asked, So, what brings you to TC? I mean, what really brings you here? The goulash, I swear, Mara said. That's some bullshit. The best Medolian shifts to Trivium City after the shutdown, chooses to come see me, and you want me to think it's for my cooking and not the gossip? You get the hell out. Gossip? You? Don't play with me, Stoddy said. I'm not in the mood, and I will throw this meal out. So, you gotta tell me. I have to know for sure. Did they actually do it? Are dead humans really helping the sentries catch the demon? You know I can't talk about that stuff, Mara said, half serious. Stoddy gasped excitedly. That's a yes? By the Eve! I can't believe it! Tell me what happened. Do they look normal? Did their Eve leave? And if so, was it replaced? And with what? Also, are they disfigured? And how are you handling all of this? I expect you're hating every second. I mean, humans. What were they thinking? They're just men, in no way prepared to accept the responsibilities on their shoulders, and with almost no choice in the matter. Makes me sad, really. It's shown me how weak the institutions we thought we could stand on are. Though, I guess Isaiah is finally getting his wish. He's always wanted more humans to know about us and our world. Wonder if it means more are going to follow. Never understood why your boss preaches so incessantly for human inclusion. Who cares? They're humans. If I'm honest, it gives me the creeps. Stoddy slowed her chopping and glanced up with slanted eyes. I lived on Earth. I know what I'm talking about. They treat every day and every meal like it may be their last. Except for their cooking techniques. Nothing good comes from those things. You should know, being a Medolian. You guys spend more time down there than any of us. Even I know we can't pin this on their whole species, Mara argued, against her baser instincts. S'pose not. Just hard to know what to think. You know what would help? If I knew who was to blame. Then I could rest a little easier. Blame always helps. And a good cry.
Stoddy wisdom. Take it or leave it.
For some reason, this Joseph business is getting under people's skin extra good, Stoddy continued. We've had rogue possessions before, but this just feels wrong. In a whole lot of ways. Maybe it's how quiet Eros is being. Nobody's heard from Lucifer in ages. Most think the guy's already dead. But the Alice Conclave can't let the Archfiend get wind or they'll face a revolt. Just rumors, mind you, and I didn't tell you any of it. Don't like speaking idly about such things. But this is big, right? Do you think people, i.e. me, should be scared? Mara didn't know what to say. The truth felt too harsh a thing to put on her friend. Any word from the tribunal? She hoped the question would both change the subject as well as answer Stoddy's question. The Senate? They're the ones who caused this mess. Stoddy was successfully distracted. The 6 who represent, I think they got their heads screwed on wrong, you know? Being forced to be in human form all the time, it gets to them. I know it gets to me. That's why I keep as much grief as I can. But those 6 Senate dopes, we make them get rid of their Eve to represent. And I get why. But I swear they're starting to act like human politicians. Politicians are atrocious no matter the frequency you're living on. Trust me, Mara said. Guess that's true. Soup's on. Stoddy slipped the bowl through a metal grating. It landed in front of Mara without spilling a drop. A spoon followed. She salivated over the steaming bowl. Inside were 3 red globs with green spots, floating in a thick, translucent yellow soup. Boulash, a common Lostros dish made from bits of ribber.
A Doloros mammal, about 9 feet tall, over 6 tons, with tiny leaf ears and a long snout that drags on the ground and is used exclusively for eating manure.
Was once a meal that had disgusted Mara, but then along came Stoddy and her secret family recipe, converting the Medolian into a lifelong fan. Careful, it's hot sugar, Stoddy warned. Mara ignored the warning, took the bowl in both hands, and slurped it back, finishing it off in 4 gulps. After slamming the bowl on the counter, she wiped her mouth. You have no idea how badly I needed that. Finishing with a burp loud enough to shake the bowl and spoon, Mara placed them on the counter to be collected. Thank you. Someone's been eating too much earth food. You're in desperate need of flavor. Stoddy tossed the bowl in a tray. Speaking of flavor, something I noticed coming in. Where are all the purebreds? Mara asked, turning to look around. You know how paranoid they can be, Stoddy remarked. That's one good thing about us purged folks. It kinda mellows you out. I think the dulling of the senses gives us less to worry about because, I swear, once it became official that Highwind and Eros were prepping armies, the purebreeds ran. All my Doloros pals, RJ and Dimitri and the like, having to hurry away. Can you imagine anything so awful? The image in Mara's mind was purely hysterical, but she shook her head in disgust and solidarity anyway. The creatures of Doloros were strong and immense, but also slow. So very, very slow. Especially the Trurds. One of the 2 types of Lostros, in addition to the Dirds. They named themselves, by the way. Not a joke. With another burp, Mara rose from the stool. Speaking of doing so, hurrying away, wish I could chat more. Unfortunately, I have business with the tribunal, I know. What do I owe you? Your money's no good here, Stoddy replied. Fine. Add 1 more favor to the pot. I have enough favors from you, Stoddy groused. Keep a few for yourself. Just hope the taste of home did you good. Now get out there and save the city. And my business. Thank you. Mara took her spear and started away from the counter, but couldn't pull herself away just yet. If you do ever start feeling the pull, you know, to go back to Doloros, just know you can talk to me about anything. You're sweet, but I'm fine, sugar, and you need to get going. Stoddy finished with a faded smile before sliding the glass door closed. Mara had to pocket her concern and hurry to the heart of the city, looking skyward out of habit as the dark spires of the tribunal rose into view, silhouetted against the burgundy sky. Overtaking the horizon, the long, dark shadow looked to be made of obsidian, dressed by wide staircases on all sides. On Earth, it would have easily spread over dozens of residential blocks. The lofted, razor-sharp points of its structure, including the numerous protruding spikes from its walls, like the barbs of a rose stem, were perfectly placed, mathematically sound, immaculate. Similar buildings built by humans, such as the Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus in Mumbai or the central train station in Amsterdam, reminded Mara of the tribunal, but they were minuscule by comparison, both in size and simple grandeur. The tribunal was not merely a central travel depot containing the BAT,
Bestiola Arteria Transvecto, our version of a subway,
but also contained the Senate and its chambers, the only unified governing body presiding over the kingdoms of Unearth. Dolefully majestic, it now appeared abandoned, with no one left to appreciate it. Mara approached the wide doorway to the section of the building devoted to law, shaped like a teardrop and made of rigid lines and hard angles. Both outside and in, she noticed no barium guards were at their posts.
Celestial elites, tough ones, never fun to fight.
Taking one of the long golden handles, she opened the 5-yard-tall door and stepped in, hastening down the broad beige hallway, letting the calm, subdued mood inside the tribunal wash over her. Celestials preferred things serene, so that's the way things were kept. Sound was dampened in the halls by the multitudes of carpets lining the floors and walls, and the heavy tapestries hanging from the ceiling, less for aesthetic and art, as much as to deliver ordinances from the Senate. Like the rest of Trivium City, the halls were spottily occupied, mostly by clerical assistants carrying scrolls to and fro, and counselor proletariats going home for the day. Mara first wanted to stop at the primary Senate chamber before questioning whatever officials she could.
If any of them are even here, or in a giving mood.
There was one large favor she needed to ask, and any of the 6 senators could provide it. Nearing the Senate hall, expecting to finally hear some commotion, she could only make out a single heartbeat inside. Moving into the chamber that was shaped like a colossal horseshoe, more than 200 yards from side to side, Mara exited the short tunnel located under the center of the stadium seating. Moving onto the central carpeted walkway, she took in the Senate chamber. The flat-faced, open end of the horseshoe opposite was built up in stacks of rose-colored wood structures. Each level was littered with tables for lawyers and bookkeepers, stacked on top of one another, built up over centuries. The highest level, a balcony, featured a podium, a long desk, and 6 chairs, belonging to the representatives of the kingdoms of Unearth. Above, the chamber's ceiling space was reserved for knitted banners depicting the 13 tenets of Unearth law, and various words of wisdom from Michael, known as the Greatest Celestial, or Champion of Inferius.
Yeah, right.
Mara knew who the real
Heroes
of Inferius were, even if no one wanted to admit it, or honor them in any way.
After all, why would they honor Medolians instead of another Celestial? We only decimated our numbers to save you all. What's so great about that?
Die Muneris, or the Day of the Gift as it was called, ever a sore subject with Mara, was the day Inferius ended, and victory was declared over Eros.
And the day my friends killed themselves. So, I wouldn't call it much of a gift.
The chamber audience seating was divided into 6 sections, each made to accommodate the body types and lifestyles of creatures from Unearth. Everyone was allowed to be a part of Senate proceedings, as transparency was a vital part of Unearth government structure.
So they say.
The sections were divided by shades of Eve, with Rapture and the Celestials having the lion's share, as well as finer seats, gilded with intricate golden crests. Eros was second largest in seating size, but located farthest from the podium, and featured several obsidian columns in its section, obscuring the vision of many archfiend who attended Senate proceedings.
Long ago, they'd been allowed to swarm up the columns so more of them could see, but Gabriel put a stop to it. Almost makes me feel bad for the Archies. Almost.
Mara found a lone figure near a table on the ground level, hunched over a pile of scrolls scattered about. She quickly recognized the Eve signature of Senator Lafler from Lanwin.
Ugh, this guy.
Being the elected representative from Lanwin, also known as the World of Joy, Lafler had been a Bobon before being stripped of his Eve and regressing to his base form. Of all the lands of Unearth, Lanwin annoyed Mara the most.
It's cliché, I know. Doesn't change the way I feel.
The short, doltish excuse for a leader spoke exclusively in little white lies, wore a human suit and tie, and had a squished face with beady little eyes. He was also an old friend of Isaiah's. Mara loathed everything about him. The senator did a surprised double-take when he spotted her, and quickly rolled up the scroll he was studying, sliding it in front of a small stack.
"Sentry Mara!"
he squeaked.
"What brings you here? As you can see, I'm in recess. We're in recess."
When she stepped up to Lafler, he backed up uncomfortably. "Where is your escort, Senator?" she asked. "I haven't seen a single barium guard since arriving, nor guard in the city."
"Oh, yes. I've given Hydrus the week off. They will return to escort me to Lanwin in a few days. As for the remainder of the guard, with no one here to protect and their sworn duty to neutrality, many have been relieved of duty. Captain Hualis has stayed on to keep the peace, but I'm afraid the barium presence has been severely diminished."
Lafler chuckled, as though convinced he was playing it cool.
"You know, I was under the impression no Medolians would be coming to the tribunal until the Archfiend was in custody. Isaiah, well, he assured me. Does your arrival mean—"
"No, the nameless Archfiend hasn't been caught."
"Then what are you doing here?"
Lafler asked.
"You and the others should be out there finding that damn Joseph. I don't even want to imagine what Highwind will do if the human host dies."
"If this is so important, why isn't the Senate in session? Where are the representatives? We need leadership. Or, Eve forbid, some action."
"I can't control the reactions of others when tragic news reaches us. Speaker Banach closed the session and called an indefinite recess. You know as well as I that's absolute. The representatives have gone back to their realms to quell tensions. It's all chaos, no matter where you look. So please, tell me we've made progress on Earth."
"Don't worry, your little mission is still a go. It will just take time. Especially with Isaiah keeping the humans out of it as much as possible. I assume you had no idea he waylaid Barker and Hunter in Africa to continue the search himself."
"I didn't,"
Lafler said with a chuckle.
"I should have known he'd coddle them. Isaiah and his love for humanity. As long as the job gets done, who cares? That's what I say."
"He's taken them to find Nigel Rowe, believing he might speak with them."
"Sounds dangerous. If there's one thing that Scythe hates more than Medolians, it's humans. He didn't provide us proper information the first time. Why would he now? There's nothing in it for him."
Lafler pinched the bridge of his nose.
"But if it's what Isaiah believes is best, I can't think of a reason to start doubting him now."
With a forlorn sigh, he rolled the final scroll tight and secured it. "It's hard to trust someone who mostly guesses," Mara said.
"I know, but though he may seem off his rocker, which is mostly true, our dear old Isaiah is also a lot more. He only went along with me on the plan to bring in the humans because he found a way to do it without violating his beliefs. Your boss can do wondrous things if we all get out of the way and let him."
"Beliefs? You're referring to Hunter and Barker?" Mara asked.
Why were they selected? Tell me, what criteria did they fill? It wasn't haphazard, I can tell you that. Isaiah was positive he wanted the teacher and the soldier. I told him, I don't want to know why you pick them, just that you're sure. He chose the way he did, I assume, with Ileana's help. He said, trust me, as long as Alex Barker is given the rapture and Bennett Hunter the wrath, all will be fine. You mean the other way, Mara corrected. Excuse me? Alex Barker was sent to Eros to be imbued with wrath. Bennett Hunter was sent to Highwind and is imbued with rapture. Isn't that how it was supposed to be? Lafleur had a slight stare of confusion before smiling and giving a mousy laugh. Oh yes, of course. Silly me. So many details. Now, I should be going. Is there anything else, Sentry Mara? Have you been listening? No one knows where the Archfiend is. The boy isn't fighting the demons spiritually, and together they can hide their Eve. Joseph has been playing everyone for 6 years. Am I the only one who wants to know why? Joseph is hiding himself, you say? Even from your keen senses? As far as I knew, only Medolians were capable of completely obscuring their Eve signatures, Lafleur said with a tinge of suspicion. I truly hope you're not suggesting one of the sentries is. Mara couldn't even finish the sentence. Lafleur leaned against the table and gave her one of his safe, patented politician smiles. I'm not suggesting anything. I came here for help. If you won't provide it, maybe one of the other senators will. Where are Ma'aft Bo and Minister Yado? Mara inquired. As I said, gone back to their worlds to quell tensions. I believe Yado had to escape to Philanos when word came of a Lostros mob balling up to ransack the city. I'm the last remaining representative. Punishment, I suppose, for my amendment, Lafleur said like a kid who just spilled his ice cream cone. Doesn't Lanwin need you? Mara asked. I won't make any difference there. The Bobons will always be the last to pick up a weapon. But I can make a difference here. Adding humans to the Joseph mandate was my idea, so I need to see this through. When I proposed the amendment, I was trying to fend off a thunderhead bearing down on us. Highwind had already begun writing legislation that would grant them, and only them, access to Earth. The other kingdoms were appalled. Eros wanted to send in a fleet of Archfiend, claiming it should be them, as Joseph is one of their own. Things got ugly. I did my best, but the storm has come anyway, and now everybody's gone back to their homes to wait it out, hoping to hear good news. Everything is riding on us, on me. So please, say whatever it is you need. I'll do everything I can. I need authorization to enter the changing chambers. Absolutely not! Have you lost your mind? What could you possibly learn down there? Mara tried to explain her theory. That Joseph had clearly done his research and become versed in multiple shades of the Eve, possibly even learned how to use them. He's operating on information so ancient most have forgotten it. I need to speak with old souls who've seen a thing or two and can't run away when I try. But Lafleur wouldn't hear it. It's not a question of importance, it's a question of time, he said, gathering the last of his bundle into his arms. I can't get you that kind of authorization before I leave next week. There's no way. You're gonna have to try another avenue. I'm just trying to keep everyone happy. When someone spends all their energy trying to make other people happy, they usually end up doing the opposite. Mara hoped her words were chilled enough to make him rethink his entire approach to life. But if you won't help, I'll find someone who will. Lafleur gave her a slight nod and scampered past, clutching his scrolls. I have to get these archives to the counselors before they begin filing motions of delay. Until next time, Sentry Mara.
Stepping aside, Mara watched the little man exit the chamber. Once alone, she took a moment to absorb being the only soul inside.
Doubt this will ever happen again. Then again.
There was a chance the Senate would never reconvene, and Mara wasn't sure how she felt about that.
Never been out of work before. Wonder what it's like.
She'd always meant to take time off to visit Fellowish Beach in Nashwin, but could never find the right opportunity.
Maybe this is finally it.
The resort was an upscale retreat that welcomed all shades of Eve, and with the rubes she'd accumulated in her years of service to the tribunal, Mara could afford to stay indefinitely. On her way out, she glanced above the stadium seating. Glistening in a row, looming like Trivium mountains, massive marble statues depicted heroes from the great kingdoms, one from every world, including 2 from Highwind. But no Medolian was present. Having seen enough, Mara walked out and on to her next mission.
Never really thought he'd give me authorization, but it's better to have asked and done it anyway than to be sneaky from the start. I know I'm right, and this will just prove how wrong everyone else has been.
It didn't matter if she would be suspended for entering the changing chambers or not. It's where she needed to be. Hurrying down the tribunal's khaki and sienna-colored halls, passing the doors to the formal kingdom offices, moving into the administrative section, and bypassing the hall that led to the BAT, she descended into the lower levels. A feeling of nervousness set in. Following her last visit to the chambers, Mara had promised herself she would never return.
Sorry, Self, but I need to do this.
Fellowish Beach would have to wait another 1,000 years or so. With her Eve at a minimum, and ready to use all her tricks, Mara found sneaking into the building sadly uneventful and boring, passing only one barium guard, who was asleep at their post. Once in the lower reaches, having passed the scullery, the kennels, and the furnace, she finally came upon the changing chambers, at the bottommost level of the tribunal's subterranean conurbation. The stench of hundreds of synthetic chemicals, molting flesh, and mounds of body waste progressively got worse, until it was more overpowering than she remembered. To say nothing of the sounds. No torture chamber on Earth could compare to the wails and cries of thousands of unearthed humans being pumped full of Eve, returning to their pure selves.
By request, too.
Reaching the bottom of the stairs, lit by torchlight, she found the chamber entrance also unguarded.
Damn, a fight might have psyched me up.
Pausing before approaching the immense metal door, she crossed puddles of slime on the rock floor, took the handle, opened it, and stepped inside.
The things I do for my job.